All right, hello. Here we are for our first portion of the cardiovascular system. I'm working with a new program here just for this chapter, so if I'm a little bit slow navigating the screen, I apologize in advance. So our first chapter here of the cardiovascular system is the blood. Let me test to make sure I know how to use this thing. How do I change the color? I guess we're just going to go with blue, huh? But that works. Okay. Hopefully you don't get a D on your blood test. Ha ha ha. There's no such blood type as D. Okay. So the cardiovascular system, we're starting with the blood. The next videos, because I think I broke it down into two. The next videos are going to be the heart and the blood vessels. But all together, this makes up the cardiovascular system. All right, so if you think about the cardiovascular system, what's the function of the cardiovascular system? Well, we have a heart, which is a pump, and it pumps the blood out through these blood vessels, and we circulate blood through the body. The blood is really like our life juice. I know I'm being kind of simple here, but the blood contains everything that all of our cells need. We have no other way of really getting things. I mean, nerve impulses, we can send messages, but how are we going to deliver gases like oxygen? How are we going to deliver nutrients like glucose and amino acids? How are we going to deliver white blood cells to help fight disease? All of our cells need these supplies daily, every second. And it is our blood that transports all of these things. So the blood is transported through these blood vessels, and the blood vessels kind of act like the roadway. And it is the blood vessels that deliver this blood throughout the body. Okay. I do want to talk a little bit about most adults have somewhere, made a mistake. See if I can get this. Yes. Most adults have somewhere between 4 to 6 liters of blood total. So that's why I'm picking right in the middle here. So you should know this. It's in red. An average adult has a total volume of 5 liters of blood. That's a lot. That 5 liters in total is constantly being circulated. Pumped out of the heart to the body, back to the heart. Pumped out again, out to the body, back to the heart. To give you an idea, these are 2 liters, 2-liter bottles of Coca-Cola. So 5 liters would be 2 2-liter bottles plus a half of a third. So we have a lot of blood because we have a lot of things to transport. Oh, I guess I gotta close out of here before sorry about that. Make sure you review the functions of the blood. I just talked about transportation, that's the big one. Not only does it transport good things that our cells need, like oxygen and nutrients, but the blood also picks up waste products. So it picks up carbon dioxide, hydrogen ions, other waste products, and then it can take them to an organ for disposal. It can take them to your kidneys to be urinated out. It can take carbon dioxide as a waste product to your lungs to be breathed out. So it's not just good things that we deliver to the tissues, it's waste products that we pick up and help get rid of. Because the blood transports white blood cells, of course, the blood helps with our immune system. And keep doing that. Pull up a little bit. There we go. Perhaps one of the things that is less thought about is helping with regulation. I think everybody can understand that we rely on the blood for transportation and for the immune system. But we don't think about blood helps us to regulate body temperature. You know that we're able to sweat, but how do we get that sweat to the skin? Well, we can deliver more blood to the surface of the skin. water from the blood leaves the bloodstream, goes to the surface of the skin, is evaporated off, has a cooling effect. So we can shift where fluid is in our bloodstream to help regulate body temperature. And we can also help regulate pH. That's huge. As a matter of fact, our blood pH has to be very specific. In the process of picking up waste products, particularly, if we pick up a lot of waste products, it can easily turn the blood acidic, for example. So it's really important that while the blood is picking up waste products, while still delivering nutrients, that we can maintain a pH. Okay, speaking of, let's switch to the composition of blood. So we're going to talk about basically the anatomy of blood. Blood is made up of, and I would like you to know these percentages. Blood is made up of 45% formed elements, but mostly 55% water. So it's 45% formed elements. Oh, I have that backwards. I don't know where my mind is this morning. I'm sorry about that. Down here is the formed elements. Here are the formed elements. The white blood cells, the platelets, and the red blood cells. This is 45% of the blood. And the remaining 55% is plasma, which is mostly water. So it's actually more watery, but it's still very dense with cells and platelets, which is a good thing in this case. It just means that we can deliver more oxygen on those red blood cells' surface. So here we go. We're going to talk about each component. The plasma is the watery portion. We already know about 55% of the blood is plasma. What is the function of that plasma? Transport medium. These red blood cells, so here's a red blood cell, here's a red blood cell, here's a red blood cell. These bigger things are white blood cells, white blood cells, white blood cells. They don't have tails, they don't have little legs. So how are we going to move these things through the blood? And the answer is through a fluid medium. Plasma, mostly water. Now, mixed in with that mostly water, we do have some plasma proteins. You don't have to know the individual ones for this class, but I do want you to know that these exist. So it's the plasma is mostly water, over 90% water really, but a small percentage are these plasma proteins that actually are really important. So that's why I want to make sure that I mention them. But you don't need to know the specifics. So if 55% of the blood is plasma, the remaining 45% are what we call formed elements. Of the formed elements, it's mostly red blood cells. 99% of all the formed elements are red blood cells. And of course, the function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. We need our cells need a lot of oxygen. So this is a great way. We just have tons of red blood cells that are constantly carrying oxygen to the tissues where the oxygen is delivered. We do have, of course, some white blood cells. Those function with our immune system. We don't have as many, but what can happen is when we get sick and if our body is fighting something, well, then we're going to unload more white blood cells into the bloodstream. So we have more white blood cells in storage, right? And then we can just release some as needed. But in an everyday situation, we keep a certain amount of circulating white blood cells. And then mixed in with those white blood cells and the red blood cells are platelets. And platelets function with blood clotting. All three very important. All right. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about each formed element, starting with the red blood cells. These are much more common. Make sure you know another name for a red blood cell is an erythrocyte. Cyte means cell. Erythro in a lot of ways means red. Have a look at the structure. So in this is a microscope slide at the bottom, and all of these are red blood cells. They are most numerous. When we look more up close at a red blood cell, we can see that it has an inner concave shape, kind of like a raft you sit in the summertime in the pool, kind of like a donut, but not where the donut's not completely hollow in the center. It is depressed in the center. And that concavity just gives it more surface area. It's interesting to note that red blood cells, or erythrocytes, they don't have a nucleus. In fact, they don't really have much of any organelles. And that's functional. By getting rid of all the unnecessary organelles, now we just have all the space devoted to hemoglobin. So, on the red blood cell, we have these structures, these large complex proteins called hemoglobin. This complex thingy over here is what hemoglobin looks like up close. It's made up of protein. It's got these globules that are linked together. But the function of hemoglobin is to bind oxygen. Because oxygen is not able to bind directly to the red blood cell surface. So instead, we have hemoglobin, and oxygen binds to hemoglobin. These hemoglobin molecules are going to transport mostly oxygen, but I do want to point out there is a small amount of carbon dioxide that's also